We're standing in the middle of a patch of Whorakoe silt loam. This is home of the gumland. The gumland soils were named after this area. Gumland because this was an area that, because of its previous dense kauri cover, there was a lot of kauri gum in the soil, and it would have been dug over. Even before the kauri digging though, the gum digging, this land was extremely poor. The kauri grew so densely on it that it killed itself out. After a couple of generations, all it would grow was short scrub, and it was a real challenge to develop for farming. It was wet, very wet in winter. In summer it has a dense silica pan under it which sets like concrete, and so it was probably some of the hardest land to develop. A part of that development process was to control the water, and one way was to just dig drains, but if those drains were dug straight down the slope, they were largely ineffective because the water tended to ooze out along a seepage line, and also those drains running down the slope, the water would flow down them and would erode the drains. So we ended up with quite large gullies. One of our answers to it was to build these contour drains or graded banks. And I worked it out once that I'd built 1,500 kilometres of these on just this sort of country. The process was to, or the reason for them, is that they're about 30 metres apart. We've found that the water can flow through the soil for about 30 metres. Any more than that, it tends to come to the surface and make it very boggy. So we put these about 30 metres apart. They are not quite on the contour. They have enough grade that the water will flow, but not too much so they won't erode. They are constructed using a road grader. So the first step would be to come onto the property and survey the lines, and we used a thing called an aqua level, which was just a piece of plastic hose 10 metres long with an apparatus on each end, a level, water level, and you could measure, you could see the water level on it, and we could adjust it to give us the right grade. This would have been built at a grade of about 1 in 150, and the person on the front level would move up and down the slope until the two levels were at the right grade. You'd take a spit of dirt out with a spade and you'd move on. The second person would come along and put their level where you had just been, and you'd work your way around the slope surveying a line. It had an advantage over the newer electronic methods or the line of sight methods at the time, because you could go around corners and under trees and do all the things that some of the more recent survey techniques don't work too well. It was very simple but very effective. We'd survey that line in. There'd be a row of spits of dirt about so big every 10 metres. We'd then come in with a tractor, or we eventually got rid of the tractor and plough. We simply came in with a road grader, walked along in front of the road grader while he took out a single furrow, which defined where the line would go. It then took about 7 cuts with a road grader to get this form. It had to be of a cross section that you can get a vehicle across. It had to be, you didn't want it too steep on the top side, or that side will actually flow in the winter. And you needed the bottom side here shaped so that you could regrass it again. 7 cuts. We surveyed it again before they moved out and made sure that the grade was right, and then the whole thing was grassed down. And a part of their ongoing maintenance was to go through and, where necessary, take out any low spots, patch up any overflows that have occurred and damage the bank. So they became a part of the landscape for probably 20 to 30 years until the organic matter in the soil built up and we started to get a bit of drainage within the soil. But certainly a very effective method of drainage, which, if we were starting on that same sort of country again in its very poor state, I would still recommend it. as a part of the land development process.